This story doesn't have a hero, just a man who told one lie and then built a life around it. I didn't plan to fall in love, not once, definitely not twice, but I did. And if you've ever wondered how far a bad decision can go when wrapped in a beautiful smile, you'll want to hear this one through, because what happened to me could happen to anyone. Her name was Nam. I'd been working from that cafe for weeks. Decent Wi-Fi, quiet tables, good coffee. But I'd never seen her there, not once. Until one evening, she showed up like she'd always belonged. Ordered tea, sat near the window, and smiled into her phone like nobody was watching. The next day, she was there again. And the next. She told me the place helped her unwind after work, said the coffee kept her awake during her English classes at night. A week later, we were already sitting at the same table, sharing cake, swapping stories. I told her I worked as a freelance designer. I didn't tell her I had a wife. I told myself it didn't matter, that it was just coffee. But I already knew I was lying. It wasn't planned. We were walking near the night market, just talking. Nothing heavy. Then she slipped her arm through mine, and I didn't pull away. We stood by a grilled banana cart, laughing about something stupid. She looked up, said, "You're not like other Farangs." I wanted to believe her. And when she kissed me, soft and certain, I kissed her back. I didn't think about my wife, not at that moment, but I did later. Lying in bed that night, phone screen turned down, Nam's lipstick still faint on my collar. We stood by a grilled banana cart, laughing about something stupid. She looked up, said, "You're not like other Farangs." I wanted to believe her, and when she kissed me, soft and certain, I kissed her back. She asked if I wanted to go somewhere. I told her I had to finish work, a weak excuse, but she didn't press. Later that night, lying alone in my condo, Nam's kiss still on my lips, my phone buzzed, a message from my wife. "Hey, just saw this crazy YouTube channel, Lost in Thailand. Stories from expats in Bangkok and Pattaya. Some are wild, some made me think of you. You should subscribe. Miss you. Call when you're free." I stared at the screen, then replied, "Crazy day. We'll call tomorrow. Love you." And I lay there in the dark, wondering how many tomorrows I could lie my way through. I'd only been in Thailand 6 months, sent here on assignment from my company back home. Design work for a new resort brand launching in Hua Hin. The kind of gig you don't turn down. Good money, beach view, just temporary. My wife stayed behind. She has her own job, her own world. We talked every other day, sometimes less. At first it felt manageable, clean lines, clear distance, but lines blur faster than you think. Now I was telling 2 different women 2 different versions of my life. And the worst part? I was starting to believe both. She never asked if I was married, not directly. But Nam had this way of pausing after certain things I said, like she was doing the math in her head, quietly, patiently. One night we were watching something on her phone, and she saw my screen light up beside me, a message from M. I flipped it over too fast. She didn't say anything, just smiled. Later she said, "You never talk about your life before Thailand." I told her there wasn't much to say. She looked at me for a long second, then just nodded, like she already knew. Nam never accused me of anything. She didn't have to. She started noticing details, the way I never left my phone face up, how I always typed my passcode with my body turned away, how I'd never stay too late, never sleep over, always early meeting tomorrow. She started showing up at my condo unannounced, once with iced tea, once just passing by. She never knocked twice, and she never looked surprised if I wasn't home. One night she said, "You work too much. Even your smile looks tired." And I realized she'd already started watching the parts of me I was trying to hide. We were sitting on the balcony. Warm air. Quiet night. Nam rested her head on my shoulder like everything was normal. She asked me what kind of house I lived in back home. I hesitated, too long, then gave her some vague answer about apartments and travel. She didn't respond, just sipped her drink. A few minutes later she said, "Do you think people always stay faithful when they're far away?" Still calm, still smiling. But something in her tone made my chest tighten. I looked at her. She wasn't looking at me, just the street below. Then, without turning her head, she said, "If someone lies, they should be ready for the truth to find them." Soft voice, like she was quoting a proverb, but I knew it was a warning. After that night, I started seeing things that weren't there, or maybe they were. Nam didn't act any different. She still sent me cute messages, still laughed at my jokes, still touched my arm when she spoke. But I stopped sleeping well, woke up at 3 a.m. for no reason, checked my phone like it might bite me. Every time she picked it up to scroll, I wondered if she'd seen something, an old photo, an email, my wife's name buried in some notification I forgot to hide. I changed passwords, cleared messages, turned off location sharing, started using private tabs for things I shouldn't have to hide. But none of it mattered, because the real problem wasn't what she could see. It was that she had already seen too much of me. It started with a call, late evening. I was sitting on my balcony, trying not to think too hard. Then the screen lit up, my wife's name. Her voice was warm, familiar. It had been a few days since we last spoke properly. I could hear wind in the background. She was walking somewhere, smiling. "I miss you," she said. "I know we said we'd wait until summer, but I've been thinking." A pause. "I talked to my boss, took a week off. I'm coming to see you." Another pause. "I land Thursday morning." I gripped the phone tighter, heart racing. That's amazing," I said, and my voice didn't even crack, but in my chest I felt it, something slipping, because now the woman I loved was flying into the same city as the woman I couldn't stop seeing, and there was no way they'd both stay in the dark for long. The next day I canceled our dinner, told Nam I had a late call with the head office. She just wrote, "Okay." Nothing more. But when we met the day after, something had changed. She didn't reach for my hand like before, didn't laugh at my stupid jokes. She just watched me, calm, unreadable. At one point she said, "You're acting different." I shrugged. "Just tired." She nodded, smiled, said nothing else, but her silence felt sharper than any question. She didn't need to say the words. She already knew, or maybe she always had. I booked a taxi to Bangkok the night before, told Nam I had meetings with the resort team. She just replied, "Okay, don't work too hard." And that made it worse. At the airport, I waited with a bouquet of flowers. Fake calm, real dread. She walked out of the terminal, eyes scanning until they found mine. Her smile was instant, pure. She dropped her bag, wrapped her arms around me. "God, I've missed you," she said. I held her tightly, smiled like I meant it, but I felt hollow inside. We got in the taxi together and headed back to Hua Hin. She chatted the whole ride, about work, home, plans for the week. I just listened, smiled, pretended. Back at the hotel, she unpacked slowly, like she was settling in for something real. And I sat at the edge of the bed, phone buzzing in my pocket. Nam doesn't know I'm not alone, not yet. My phone buzzed just after lunch. We were back in the room, my wife lying next to me, scrolling through vacation ideas. "Nam, are you okay? Haven't heard from you." I locked the screen without replying, felt the heat creep up my neck. Told my wife I needed the bathroom. Sat there on the closed lid, staring at the message. Then another one came. "Nam, did I do something wrong?" No emojis this time, no smile, just words I didn't know how to answer. I typed and deleted 3 different replies. Nothing felt safe. I wanted to throw the phone out the window. Instead, I put it on silent and slipped it under a pillow, and walked back into the room like nothing was falling apart. She stopped texting. No calls, no, "Where are you?" Just silence. And that scared me more than anything. Nam knew where I stayed. She'd been there before, brought iced tea, forgot earrings, left a hair tie by the sink. She knew the staff by name. Now every knock made my stomach clench. Every time the elevator dinged in the hall, I waited for her face to appear around the corner. My wife asked if everything was okay. I told her I was stressed from work. She kissed my shoulder, said I should rest. I smiled, but I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark listening for footsteps, and wondering how long silence could hold before it exploded. That night, we had dinner by the pool. The lights were soft, the wine good, the mood perfect. She looked across the table at me, calm, happy. But my mind kept drifting. To Nam, the way she held her chopsticks wrong, the way she tilted her head when I talked, the way she watched me like she could hear what I wasn't saying. My wife reached across the table, touched my hand. I flinched. Not much, but enough. She pulled back. "You okay?" "Yeah, just tired." We walked back to the room in silence, and I kept thinking how Nam walked closer, tighter, like she never wanted to lose me, like she already knew she would. In bed, my wife rested her head on my chest. I stared at the ceiling. She asked softly, "Are you still mine?" I didn't answer right away. The next morning I made coffee. She sat on the edge of the bed, silent, scrolling her phone. She hadn't brought it up again, but the question still hung in the air. "Are you still mine?" I kissed her shoulder. She smiled, tight, like she didn't believe the gesture, like she'd already started preparing for the answer she didn't want. I told her I had to check in at the office. She offered to walk with me. I said no. Too much heat, too little time. She said okay, but her eyes didn't move from mine for a long time. On the way out, I checked my phone. Still nothing from Nam. And somehow, that silence rang louder than all the things my wife wasn't saying. That afternoon, I told my wife I needed to clear my head. She offered to come with me. I said no, said I wanted to be alone with my thoughts. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. I ended up at the cafe, the one where I first saw Nam, where she used to laugh at my terrible tie and drink coffee like it was sacred. I ordered something I didn't want, sat in the same corner, waited for nothing, and for everything. I thought about texting her, just, "Are you okay?" But I didn't, because what if she wasn't? What if she answered? What if she didn't? It had been 3 days, 3 days of silence, and now I was the one checking my phone every hour, not because I wanted her back, but because silence meant control, and she was never the silent type. I came back to the room just after sunset. My wife was on the balcony, wrapped in one of my shirts, sipping wine. She smiled when she saw me. I smiled back. My phone buzzed in my pocket. No name, no words, just a photo. Nam, standing on the opposite side of the street, across from the hotel entrance, looking straight at the camera, a half smile on her lips, and in the background, the hotel sign. Our hotel. That was all. No caption, no timestamp. She didn't need one. She knew. She had known. And now she wanted me to know that she was done being quiet. I locked the screen, slipped the phone into my pocket. My hands were steady, somehow. "Everything okay?" she asked from the balcony. I nodded. "Just work." She came back inside, curled up beside me on the bed. I held her, and all I could think was, how long had Nam been watching? How long had she known? I closed my eyes. Nam's face burned behind my eyelids, not smiling, not angry, just waiting. Every sound in the hallway made me flinch. Every vibration in my pocket felt like a countdown. I wasn't afraid of what she'd say. I was afraid of how well she'd say it, because Nam didn't scream, Nam didn't threaten, Nam just watched, until it hurt. I woke up sometime after 2 a.m. The room was dark, except for the blinking light on the aircon. My wife's breathing was soft and even. She curled into me in her sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, heart beating like something was already happening. I reached for my phone. One new message. From Nam. Just one sentence. Should I say hello tomorrow? No emoji. No punctuation. Just a sentence sharp enough to cut through the dark. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply field. But there was nothing to say. Nam wasn't asking. She was warning. She stirred beside me. I felt it, the shift in her breathing, the quiet tension in the air between us. You're not really here, she said. Her voice was low, almost tender, like a fact, not an accusation. I didn't respond, just stared at the ceiling, pretending to sleep. But I knew she saw through it. She turned to her side, away from me. No crying, no questions, just silence. And somehow that was worse. I wanted to reach out, say something, but everything I'd say would only make it worse. So I let the silence grow between us, like a fault line. In the dark, I heard her whisper, "Who is she?" I couldn't breathe, not because of guilt, not even because of fear, but because lying had become harder than the truth. I sat up in bed. She stayed still, her back to me. I stared at the wall, then at the floor, then nowhere. "There's someone," I said. The words came like glass breaking. She didn't turn, didn't scream, didn't cry. She just asked, "How long?" "Months," I said, and that was it. No names, no details, just the fracture, made permanent. She packed in silence. No questions, no shouting, just quiet movements, folding, zipping, placing. I stood by the window, useless, my mouth dry, hands trembling for no reason. "I'll book my own ride," she said. Calm, final, no hesitation in her voice. I turned, ready to say something, anything. But what's the point of saying sorry when the person you're saying it to has already stopped hearing it? She looked at me once, a glance that held all the love she used to feel and all the weight of what I broke. Then she was gone. The door clicked shut like a sentence, and I was alone. I messaged Nam that evening. One line, "We need to talk." No reply. The next morning, I walked to the cafe. Our table was empty, her chair still pulled out slightly like someone had just left. I asked the barista if she'd seen her. She shook her head, said Nam hadn't been in for days. I called, straight to voicemail. I walked past her apartment. No lights, no shoes by the door, just silence. Everywhere. She was gone, not angry, not explosive, just gone. And now, so was everything else. It didn't happen all at once. You think it will. One moment, one mistake, one crash. But no, it happens in layers. A message you shouldn't answer. A touch you pretend means nothing. A lie that's easier to tell than the truth. You keep walking forward, thinking you're in control, until the ground gives out and you realize you built your whole world on someone else's silence. I lost them both. Not because they were cruel, but because I was selfish. I wanted the comfort of one and the thrill of the other. I wanted love without cost, truth without consequences. But Thailand doesn't work like that. Love doesn't work like that. And if I'm honest, I always knew this would end badly. I just thought I'd get away before it did. Turns out I stayed too long. If you ever think you're smarter than the stories you've heard, remember mine. I didn't lose everything because I was unlucky. I lost it because I lied, and because I thought I was the exception. Like, subscribe and share your thoughts below. Some stories don't need a villain, just a man who lies to himself long enough.